In this video, I'll be demonstrating how I painted this bowl of fruit using an acrylic underpainting and then switching to oils to do some glazing. This photograph was taken from Free Artist Reference Photos, which is a group available on Facebook by the photographer Frida Jones Sidarevicius, and I'm pretty certain I've mispronounced that. I do apologise, Frida. But it is a fantastic reference photo and you're able to apply to join this group and grab a copy for yourself. I've toned the canvas with some burnt umber acrylic, and that's to get rid of the white of the canvas, and then I've transferred the image onto there. Now it's actually quite a dark undertone because I do know that we'll be adding quite a lot of darks onto that background. And I'm going to begin doing an acrylic underpainting using quite a limited palette of burnt umber, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow and some cobalt teal. I also add a little bit of cadmium red later on as well, and of course some white. Now I'm going to try and keep the underpainting relatively loose and just block in the basic main colours that I can see. So for example, with the apples and the oranges, just keeping them to that localised colour. And to begin with, really, I'm just using some dome blenders, either from the MazArt set or from Rosemary & Co. And I'm really kind of dry brushing these colours on. And of course, whatever I put in the glass bowl, I'm also including in the reflection below. So keeping this pretty loose to begin with. And then once I've got that basic colour on, I start to increase the saturation. I'm adjusting the colours as well, and I'm trying to not be too bright with my colours at this stage, using that burnt umber to sort of desaturate. So here you can see underneath the glass it's quite a dark red. So just add in that cadmium red and then a little bit of burnt umber will keep those colours just a little bit desaturated. So for the pears, I'm using burnt umber and that cadmium yellow, and this is giving me a really nice undertone. I'm just adding a little more of that burnt umber on the shadow side. Remember, as is above, so is below in that reflection. Now for the glass, I'm using the cobalt teal, and again just blocking that in, blocking the brighter areas that I can see. Now I know this isn't the right colour, but I'm also very aware that when we switch to the oils we can glaze over this, and that's what's going to give us that beautiful blue tone that you can see in the glass. Once I've got that colour everywhere, and of course repeating that into the reflection below, I switched to adding a little bit more white to the mixture and putting some extra sparkle in there as well. I'm always aware that I will be glazing over this later on in the oil painting stages. I'm looking carefully at the reference and trying to create some of these gorgeous patterns that we can see in all that shine on the glass. Once I've got that initial layer on, I'll go back and start to detail and bring a little bit more highlights into each subject. At this moment I'm working on the pears and just really paying attention where I can see some of these highlights. Next, I begin to work on the background, just darkening it with a layer of burnt umber. And of course, repeating that in the table below. I do add a little white to that burnt umber while it's still wet to try and get the feeling of some light coming in from that left hand side. It is important to do this wet into wet so that you get a nice soft transition with that acrylic. Now I want to start adding some darks in the glass, and for that I'm using the burnt umber and the cad red medium and trying to get a sort of a purpley brown tone. Once again, very aware that I'll be glazing over this, but I just want those stronger dark colours. Once I've got a basic colour on everywhere, I go back and start to reinforce some of the colours, brightening the highlights and darkening some of the shadows. I'm still with acrylics at this point, and this entire underpainting took me about an hour and a half. I'm adding more saturation to the fruit, and particularly the fruit that's on display, rather than highlighting too much the areas underneath the glass. Going even brighter now, starting to put some of the real shine on the glass using just white. So at this point, I'm just going back and forth, darkening my darks and lightening my lights. Really what you're looking for with glass is that real strong contrast between those lights and darks, and that's what will make it look really shiny. And so this is how it looked at the end of the underpainting stage. You need to let this completely dry before switching over to the oils. So I'm using a little bit of liquid as my medium, but always use your medium sparingly. Don't oversaturate your oil painting with too much medium. I'm looking really just so that the paint flows off the brush. So once again, I'm going to reinforce the background with this burnt umber, and then I'll be adding some white to that left corner, and of course repeating everything into the table below. Once I'm happy with everything, I'll use a mop to smooth the background and the glass table. I begin to reinforce the colours on the fruit, adding in some darker shadows and then also adding in some more saturated colours in that lighter area. adding more white to the mixture so that you can pop on a highlight, and I'm tapping that on so I can create a little bit of texture at the same time. I'm brushing on some highlights onto the pears and just making them a little bit more yellow in places as well. I'll also increase the shadows as well. Again, I'm really applying the paint quite loosely so that you can both see the new application of oil paint as well as still see the underpainting underneath. And this is what's really giving us that lovely texture of the pears. Now to the exciting part, which is glazing that beautiful blue glass. Here I'm using ultramarine blue and I'm adding the medium to the mixture so that it remains a nice transparent glaze. I'm very carefully now going to go over the glass using this colour. And of course all those colours that we did on the underpainting are all going to peek through this lovely transparent layer. You'll note as well that I haven't added any wet paint to the detailing at the bottom. I've added wet paint to the fruit that's exposed, but anything that's underneath the glass I haven't added because I know I'm going to be going over with this glazing layer, and you can only glaze onto a dried surface. And as I'm putting this lovely glazing transparent layer on, you can see all of the colours that we did in the underpainting are still coming through. But again, all that fruit is looking as though it's behind the glass. As above, so below, I'm going to continue glazing over that reflection. And once I'm happy with the glazing layer, I go into some white and start to pop on those lovely, bright, shiny areas. This is with quite thick white over the top of that wet glaze. And once I'm happy, I'll sign the painting. I really do hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I certainly enjoyed painting it with all those glorious colours. Thank you again to Frida for the fantastic reference photo. If you have enjoyed this video, please do let me know in the comment section below, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Today I'll be painting this gorgeous blue vase of fruit. This photograph was taken, what's it called? This photograph This photograph was taken from Free Reference Photos for Artists, which is a group available on by the photographer Frida Joan Frida Joan Sidara-Vicious. By the photographer Frida Joan Sidara-Vicious, and I'm absolutely certain I've mispronounced that. I do apologise, Frida. Yeah, no, I don't like any of that. Reference Photos for Artists, which is a group available on Facebook by the... Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Done.